China has been tightening its controls over cybersecurity as part of its attempts to bring the wild west of the internet under control. And big tech companies are coming under fire. To unpack the latest developments, I'm joined by the Post's John Artman and Xinmei Shen. Now, Xinmei, can we talk a little bit about what is going on in China at the moment and why Beijing is tightening its control over cybersecurity?
Cybersecurity, or I think more specifically data security, is part of a much wider crackdown from Beijing on these big tech companies. So for the past decade or so, even though the Chinese government has always kept a very strong grip on online speech, from a business perspective, they've allowed these companies to grow quite freely for a long time. But now that era is over. Since late last year, the Chinese regulators have really upped their games, and a lot of these tech companies' business, we could say problematic business practices are now being examined much more closely.
And how does ride-hailing app Didi play into all of this? You know, sometimes it's referred to as the Uber of China. It's been making headlines recently from the IPO launch to being pulled from the app stores.
So Didi now has about 90% of China's ride-hailing market. It's really big, and it's been planning to go public for a while now. So recently, what's been reported was that China's internet regulator, the Cyberspace Administration of China, or the CSC, asked the company to not rush into a US IPO and conduct a cybersecurity review before they go ahead, because they say Didi has a lot of data that could potentially be sensitive. They're afraid might go to US regulators in the process of going public in the US. But what happened was Didi decided to ignore that and go ahead with its listing plans, which triggered the series of regulatory actions. So 2 days after it went public in New York, the CAC launched a cybersecurity review into the company and asked it to stop registering new users. And 2 days after that, it also pulled all Didi apps from Chinese app stores.
How much of this is really about cybersecurity, and is there something else at play here?
There's definitely something else at play. How much this is all about cybersecurity, I mean, I would say it's probably 50-50. China has been working for many years to create regulations and guidelines for the technology industry and the digital economy. The digital economy has been one of China's main growth engines, and it will continue to be one for a long time. But the issue, as Xinmei mentioned, is that these tech companies have been allowed to operate with a free hand for over a decade at this point. Part of it was probably because regulators realized that the internet industry and the tech sector had enormous potential, and they didn't necessarily want to kill the golden goose, as it were, before it had actually laid the egg, to stretch a metaphor. So what we're seeing now through the antitrust investigations, through this cybersecurity review from Didi, but then also kind of some big pieces of legislation, some smaller regulations that are coming out, is that slowly but surely the government is creating guidelines and kind of building a fence around the technology industry. On the one hand, as Xinmei mentioned, I think the government is nervous about the power of the technology companies. As we can see in the United States and Europe, for example, companies like Google and Facebook and Amazon have had an outsized influence on consumer behavior, on the economy, and even to a certain degree public policy. And you couple that with the enormous amounts of data that they have, whether that's kind of data about infrastructure like roads and transportation, or whether it's about users, that data could be used in ways that are not necessarily aligned with central government goals.
Why is the government so concerned about the sharing of data now?
The real issue here is an issue around data sovereignty. And you look at the origins of the internet. It was the physical architecture was designed in such a way to allow for the free flow of information. Anyone at any point could connect and become part of this decentralized network. However, what we've seen is that countries over time have begun to really start to lay claim over pieces of the internet, beginning in some ways with China. First, of course, with the Great Firewall, which effectively isolates the Chinese internet from the rest of the world, and then increasingly also from China moves to ensure that data collected in the country stays in the country. And so we can see that Russia is doing something similar. The United States seems to be doing something similar as well. And the issue here is, if you are in strategic competition with another great power, and that other great power has free access to data, whether it's about key infrastructure, whether it's about your users, that could be a real threat. So I think when we're looking at for big tech, I think the big question that we're asking here at the Tech Desk is what's next. So we've seen antitrust, so kind of how these companies play in the market. We've seen now data security and cybersecurity. So how these companies are using and sharing the new oil, if you will. So what's the next area of regulation? Because I don't think that we have not seen the end of this yet. I think that there's still many messages that big tech should be planning to receive from Beijing, but what those are specifically, it's not so clear.
And I'm sure you guys will be following this very closely in the days and months to come. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.